Welcome students to the orientation module and specifically welcome to this presentation on student resilience. We found the topic of resilience very important for us to really delve into as students and people that are living in a very busy world, juggling studies and family, social lives, bills, and everything else that we are dealing with. Resilience is very important for us to develop to help us deal with and conquer everything that we are faced with on a daily basis. Before we jump into it, let me introduce myself. My name is Raisa Mohamed-Ryklief. I'm an online facilitator and counselor at Togi, and I'll be taking you through this journey of what resilience is and some practical tips which are not exhaustive on how to develop and build our resilience. I always like to start with a quote, and I feel that this quote gives you some hope because you may feel at this point, how resilient am I really? But resilience is something that does grow, it does get stronger, and we can become more resilient. So, just a word of hope for some of us that might need it at this time. So, what exactly is resilience? We hear this word, but we're not necessarily very clear on what it actually means. So, let me first start off by saying that people are not necessarily born with a finite amount of resilience. Resilience is not necessarily inherent. We have perhaps, let's say, a little bit of it, but resilience can be developed and it can be built up throughout your life. It can be learned, it can be acquired, and it can be worked on. You can hone the skill or you can hone your resilience through consciously deciding to observing specific types of practice by planning it to make it part of your life. And definitely you can come to a point where resilience really assists you in dealing with everything that you need to focus on and everything that you need to get done. So, as I said, resilience, research has shown that resilience is something that we develop, it's something that we can grow. And I like this Merriam Webster dictionary definition of resilience. It's very short, but it says a lot. It says resilience is an ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune and change rather. So we deal with a lot on a daily basis. We also live or deal with huge life stresses like the death of a loved one. Although a death of a loved one is expected sometime in your life, it is very traumatic and the grief can be very overwhelming. Beyond this, we're also dealing with things like losing jobs, things like, disease, sadness, depression, even getting a new job. That can be overwhelming and stressful too. But your ability to adjust and make place for all of these things in your life and to deal with them is what is where resilience really comes into play. While the definition I just shared with you from the Merriam-Webster dictionary is quite specific, we can also extend this definition and explain it in various ways. So it could also be the ability to recover quickly from difficult or challenging life experiences. So although you mourn or you find difficulty or you do feel how hard something can be or has been, resilience allows you to sit in the moment, feel the pain, feel the difficulty of the moment, but then move on as you need to and get not necessarily get back to quote unquote normal life, but be able to cope and taking the next steps. It also helps you to overcome obstacles in reaching your goals and objectives. Also, that you can face complications, deal with difficulties and setbacks, and adjusting, as I said earlier, in the face of pain and stressful conditions. Although you, in many cases, you feel like you'll never be able to go on, you'll never be able to deal with life again, because you have some type of resilience, you are able to take the next step and do what is expected of you. As a student, you're going to be juggling quite a bit. You already might have quite a number of things on your plate, and we've now added a new role of being a student, and it can be very difficult prioritizing and juggling everything that you're having to do. And prioritizing, and I've said it twice here, prioritizing is really, really important, but also oftentimes you'll be in a situation where both work and studies are important. There are deadlines at work and studies, and you're just going to have to push through and make time for everything and missing out on sleep. So I've used this funnel to really look at the various roles that you could possibly be dealing with or playing in your life rather. And so there's a role that you play within your family, and they have expectations of you. You may need to serve your family in different ways. You have to be present for your family. So you might not necessarily have to do something for them, but just the fact that you are unavailable, it does become quite difficult. These needs are usually immediate and daily, and it's something that you can't juggle or you can't really push aside for a long period of time. And then work. Work is definitely a priority for many of us. We don't really get time off if we have other things to do, and you really have to perform. You cannot go in and say, you know what, I'm a student, or many people can't. If you can, you're quite lucky. Many people can't go in and say, you know what, I have a deadline coming up, I need to get off some time from work. If you can do that, that's great, but oftentimes people can't do that. And now you've added studies, and so studies have lots of deadlines and could end up that you feel that you are not giving your studies your all as you would like to. So you end up skimming, looking for shortcuts, asking for extensions, and all of this builds up and does create difficulty. Now, although I've used the funnel, I do want to just say that I'm not giving one area priority over the other. I struggle to actually put everything into this funnel in a way that makes sense. But I thought that perhaps this leveling might have some kind of bearing in some of our situations. Then paying bills. Paying bills causes lots of tension, and this can sometimes be on top, at the bottom, in the middle. It moves around, but generally it does cause quite a lot of stress and worry because it's something that we need to do. It's important, it's constant, and it allows us to live the lives that we need to live. So bills definitely do take a big portion of our consciousness. Then your social life. So oftentimes people think that the social life is something that you can negotiate upon and that you can just push to the side. And in other instances, people definitely are expected to attend family functions, be present, be available. This can be quite difficult. It can sometimes, for some people, feel like a burden, and you wish, oh, could I just put this aside? Could I just miss this? You might be missing a lot of social functions because as a student you need to find time around the rest of the things that you do, or even if you are a full-time student, just to keep up and really interrogate the work that you're given can take up a lot of time. And so your social life and oftentimes your self-care, the things that you need to do for yourself, your health, your needs, fun, and importantly, and for many people it's important for them to really take care of themselves. And of course the expectation that you need to be um, you know ready to assist other people. It's quite important. And pray, which is a guiding practice in many of our lives, is important too. So oftentimes we feel the push and pull between these different types of elements, and it starts to weigh us down, it starts to weigh us out. And because we definitely many people are negotiating far too much on themselves, we feel like we lose ourselves, we feel like we don't know where to go, and it just feels really, really overwhelming. And so you end up, and I actually borrowed this from business, or um, a more business focused area, competitor matrix. And so the competitor matrix in this instance is all of these different things competing for your attention. Some things have higher value and some lower at different times, and it does change, but you're always feeling this competition happening for your time. So what can we do? We need to create a plan. We need to understand what needs to be done first, what needs to be prioritized. Sometimes family is the highest priority. Sometimes you ask your family to give you some time and studies become priority, sometimes work. So we can shift these responsibilities and expectations, but it does mean that you have to develop the resilience to get through all of this. So this part of the presentation was really just talking about what we're having to deal with, and now we're going to move into a little bit about resilience and what the components of it is or could be, and of course we'll then move on to the practical steps. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the 7 C's model of resilience, and this is the Ginsberg 7 C's model of resilience. As I've alluded to earlier in this presentation, we cannot prevent adversity and daily stress, but what we can do is we can learn to be more resilient by changing how we think about challenges and difficulties and adversities. So we're under tremendous stress, which could potentially damage our physical health and our psychological well-being. We therefore need to develop strengths. We need to do things such as acquiring skills to cope and recover from the many, many things that you are faced with every day that are both expected and oftentimes unexpected too. So let us have a look at the 7 C's, the model of resilience. Before I go into the seven C's, you may think, well, I'm coping just fine. Why do I need to build up my resilience? Remember that stress builds, trauma builds. So the more stressful situations that you are exposed to, the more traumatic events that you are exposed to, and I mean, our world right now is filled with stress that builds up, and stress sits in your body. It physically sits in your body. So that is why our muscles become quite tense. That is why sometimes our immune system is lowered, because that is caused by stress. So you might notice that when you are very stressed, it's easier to injure yourself, and the reason for that is your muscles actually become tense. And if you're pressing on your neck muscles, for example, you can feel the tightness in your neck, and that is caused by the stress and trauma that our body is actually tensing up, because it's part of the fight or flight process that our body goes through in difficult situations. So this is why we really want to work on developing resilience. And so look at these seven C's and listen to a little bit about what I'm going to say about these seven C's, and find out what and how it is possible for you to shift, and possible for you to develop your resilience ability, or your resilience quota. And perhaps quota is not the correct word, but I'm hoping you understand what I mean. Okay, so let's jump in. So the first one is confidence. And when we talk about confidence, we need to focus on understanding who you are and what you are good at. This does build your confidence, because you feel, you know what, I know what my purpose is, I know what I stand for, I know what I'm good at, and therefore it allows you to just feel a little bit more happy in who you are, a little bit more confident in your abilities. We then talk about competence, and that's feeling capable. This is also going to improve your confidence, your self confidence. Feeling capable, focusing on your strengths, learning from your mistakes. So, focusing on what you're good at. So, if you're quite a good painter, focusing on that does help you to feel better about yourself. It helps you to feel good about yourself. And when, for example, you're part of an assignment or a group, you know what you bring to that group. So that's very important. Also, learning from mistakes, understanding as human beings, we all make mistakes, and that we need to be able to own our mistakes and learn from them as much as possible. Connection. Connection is very important. This is the building of relationships and connecting with others. As a Togi student, this one is quite important. I would say connection is important in every part of life, but I'll talk specifically about your connection at Togi. Connect with your lecturers, connect with your classmates or your cohort. This really does help quite a bit. Oftentimes, you read something and you're not sure how to interpret it, and talking to someone else does really make a big difference. And I want to add an important point here, is that I always encourage students to connect with their lecturers as much and as early as possible. This really does make a huge difference, because when lecturers do know you, they know what to expect from you, they know that you are really involved and invested in your studies, and they therefore know what you are capable of. So ask questions. That is our job as lecturers, is to provide you with support. So ask questions as early as you possibly can, and preferably not the night before the assignment is due. But if you feel concerned or confused about anything, reach out either to your lecturer or your classmates if you feel more confident doing that. Oftentimes, there will be a forum on a module, and you can engage in that forum and connect with your classmates. That does help quite a bit. Connections definitely build your confidence and your competence as well. So you can see all of these are quite connected. We now move on to character. And character is about developing a set of models and values. And this is really about knowing who you are and what you stand for. No matter what situation you're presented with, no matter what challenge you are faced with, because you have a strong set of values and you're guided by these specific values and models, you are able to easily make that decision in any circumstance and be true to who you are, because those are easily identifiable for you in terms of obviously models and values, easily identifiable for you, so you know exactly how to react in any given situation. Contribution is the next one. Realize that you bring something to the table and endeavor to do so. Try to bring yourself, try to bring your experience, your ideas, your thoughts, your efforts into any situation that you are in. It also helps to build your confidence and your competence. And as you can see, these are all connected, and you feel like you bring value to a situation. Coping, when we talk about coping, we can talk about how you adapt to situations, how you actually deal with them. So work on stress relieving activities, for example, or strategies. We all deal with stress and trauma in different ways, and some of us do things like swimming, we play sport, we watch Netflix, we spend time with friends, people sew, some of us crochet, or whatever it is that brings you joy or brings you a feeling of peace and helps to relieve some of that stress. It is important to remember that trauma and stress, and I've done a lot of work in the field of trauma, and trauma, as I said earlier, sits in your body. It physically sits in your body, and oftentimes, things like exercise helps to release that stress from your body and helps to release the tension sitting in your body. And that means that you're less likely to injure yourself or to get sick too much because you are relieving that stress in natural ways. It's not always completely effective, but it does help. Deep breathing also helps us to cope. And the reason deep breathing helps us to cope because it's almost known as your body's override. And so when you're having, for example, a panic attack and or anxiety attack, they often tell people to breathe and people feel like, why should I breathe? It doesn't make sense. But when you're in a state of panic, and there's a lot of research in this area, when you're in a state of panic or anxiety, there's nothing you can do except breathe because breathing helps you to override that. I often call it, kind of overwhelming of your body. When your body's overwhelmed or your system is overwhelmed, there's like a short circuiting that happens, and then it results in a panic attack or anxiety attack. And breathing helps to override that. It takes some time. You do really need to do it and be used to it. You need to do it while you're not having a panic attack, and then it works while you're having a panic attack. So deep breathing is really very, very important. Then lastly, control. So what can I control? Choose to work on not necessarily having to control everything, but trying to control the things that you can control. So, for example, starting early on assignments. So, I'm using that as an example because if you do leave it for the last moment, and starting early on assignment is something you can control. But if you do leave it for the last moment, oftentimes you're going to find that lots of things pop up when the deadline is coming towards you, and so you find that you have three assignments due and work also has something for you to do, and you have a social obligation and you get sick or your child gets sick. So all of these just build up and then you feel like you're losing control. But if you plan well ahead in advance and before the time, well, in advance, and when you do have more of a quieter period, it does help. So these are the 7 C's. You can interpret them in many ways, and I've chose to interpret them in the way that I've explained. They do, as you can see, it is something that you can work on. It's not something that you necessarily you don't have to have confidence. You don't already have to have competence. Even coping, all of these things are things you can develop, you can work on, and it helps you to do so. So I would encourage you to really keep this model that I've just spoken about, the seven C's model of resilience. Keep this model available to you. Connect with it as much as you possibly can and remind yourself on the areas that you want to work on. It's a good exercise. It doesn't take too much extra work because you can weave it into your everyday life, but it does really make a difference in just feeling like you can cope with what you're having to deal with on a daily basis. I'm going to briefly look at building resilience. I don't want to make this video too long because I know it can be difficult to sit through a long video and it becomes overwhelming. So we're going to look at a few things that help to build resilience. I'm not going to go into too much detail because the information is a bit or is somewhat self-explanatory. And if you've looked at the literature that I have uploaded to this unit already, you'll see this in a little bit more detail, but I've just added this here, 10 ways to build resilience. And so it is a bit repetitive. We've spoken about this in the previous slides as well, but just things like nurturing a positive view of yourself, accept that change is part of living, and so don't always fight it, don't always see crisis in everything. So these types of things are really important for you to build resilience. So read up about it, remind yourself about it, and understand that it might seem that it's just short points or small points, but taking care of yourself and working to building resilience really makes a big difference. I think SWOT analysis are very important in many aspects of life, but I think when it comes to understanding yourself, a SWOT analysis is extremely helpful. Do one on yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities are available to you or exist, and what threats exist as well. This gives you a good perspective on yourself. So, what are my strengths? My strengths, for example, are that I am good at writing, that I'm good at remembering things, for assignments and for tasks or exams. My weaknesses are that I procrastinate. That's something many of us have. I don't connect with people very well. The opportunities that exist are that there are students that do have that strength that I can work with. My lecturers are willing to support me. And then the threats, what threats exist? My threats are that I don't play, I don't really focus on what's going on. So the threat is that I'm going to miss assignments or whatever the case is. Do the SWOT analysis. I think that it is very, very helpful. Then the resilience model, also just a reminder of some of what we've said before. And this are just looking at the various domains within or that you can consider in relation to resilience. Another model, and this is just the 6 domains of resilience, and it just helps to break things up in more understandable and achievable sections. So, for example, your vision, your composure in terms of regulating your emotions, being calm and in control. Being calm and in control also helps you because it helps you to deal with the here and now. Nutrition and sleep is extremely important, and I think as we all get older, we realize more and more how important this is. Exercise, of course, as well, very important. We feel like, how do I make time? But build small things into your life instead of, driving to the shop that's down the road, maybe walk to the shop, or instead of, bring a jug of water to your desk, just fill up your glass. So you have to keep walking up and down to the tap. These small things do help you with exercise. So it seems like I'm going further and further away from the topic of resilience, but actually, all of these are components that we need to remember when we are considering resilience. So, for the sake again of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but here are some benefits of resilience and student resilience specifically. It's the ability to cope with your studies, preventing breakdowns. It builds good relationships. You know when you need to take a break, that's very important. Know when your body is telling you this is the point we need to break. This is the point that we need to take a time out. We need to just pull ourselves together. Understand that that is important. It's an important moment to take note of. I find providing practical ideas are always important. We've discussed some of this in this video, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail here again. But remember things like prioritizing. Sometimes you cannot do everything perfectly. Prioritize what you need to do. Try to keep to your deadlines. Take responsibility for your learning. Connect to your lecturers. Not to connect with your lecturers. Connect with your classmates. Speak to people if you need help. Do so timelessly. Look after your health. Remember, not looking after your health can result in things like lowered immune system, which means you're going to get sick a lot quicker. Over time, this can develop into you feeling quite depressed or having a depressed mood. You can develop things like muscle pain, muscle spasms, and so it's important that you really take care of yourself and do the best that you can, but also understand that you cannot necessarily, as much as you want to, give 100% to everything all the time. Sometimes you need to cut yourself a little bit of slack. So all of these things that we've spoke about in this video help you to build resilience, help you to cope with whatever you're dealing with in your life. And so I know it feels like it is an uphill journey and an uphill battle in many times and in many instances, but do know that the more you practice, like as they say, the brain is a muscle, so you can really develop that muscle. The more you work on your resilience, the more you work on your coping strategies, the more investigating which coping strategies work for you, the better you will become at coping with anything that life throws at you. I wish you the best for this year. I wish you the best for your educational journey in general. I do have faith that if you put in the work that you will definitely get out the result that you desire. All the best for this year and for the rest of your studies. For some of you, it might be the end, closer to the end of your journey, while for others it might be a lot longer for you to get there. But either way, good luck with it all.